Have you lost control of the House?
I have not lost control.
Because this is the third time.
Look, we have the smallest majority in U.S. history. Okay? These are not normal times. There are processes and procedures in the House that are less frequently used when there are larger majorities. And when you have the luxury of having 10 or 15 people who disagree on something, you don't have to deal with it. But when you have a razor-thin margin, as we do, then all the procedures in the book, people think are on the table. And that's the difference.
I think it's really important that we just take a step back and understand what's going on, because for the first time in 20 years, healthcare is the #1 financial concern of Americans. The Affordable Care Act has never been more popular than it is today. And so there is.
How is it more popular? How has it never been more popular when it's so expensive?
When you look at polling, it is fascinating. More than 60% of Americans say that it's a positive thing, and they don't know what the Republican alternative is. And so they're very concerned. When you ask who is going to be better for the economy or better for health care, Democrats win in polling, and Republicans are losing on this messaging. So my question really is, Congressman, how do you talk to Americans right now who are saying the Republicans don't have a plan, the Democrats' plan is better, and they're the ones that are going to get it under control? How do you explain what your plan is that's better than what's in place today?
You explain it by explaining that it's not working. When the government has to subsidize a program, that means it's not working. Right now, the insurance companies are the only ones who are winning in this debate. And in Obamacare, the Unaffordable Care Act is ripe with waste, fraud, and abuse. The GAO, they entered fake applicants in there. 100% of them were accepted. 90% of them were still on the next year. And it's just ripe with waste, fraud, and abuse. We see where 58,000 dead people were getting subsidies. And then 7,000 of them before they even went on the plan.
Yeah, it's a great point.
It is just so ripe.
Congressman, that's why I keep saying, I mean, the Democrats, high-priced health care. It's amazing to me that you can't communicate this as Republicans and that they can win on this messaging issue of affordability.
Now we're sitting here and we're listening to nonsense about health care, where my colleagues on the other side of the aisle sit here saying, well, you guys aren't doing anything about the massive expensive cost of health care. Why do you think it's expensive? Because you literally cut a deal with insurance companies to run health care. You think that's going to run wild? Yeah. That's why they have 2,000% profit increases, and the American people can't afford to go to the doctor of their choice while we enrich insurance companies. And yet Republicans will complain about it, and then they'll offer milquetoast garbage like we're offering this week, and then go home at Christmas and say, look at what we're doing. We're campaigning on reducing health care. Well, congratulations. At some point, people will look at this body and say, maybe we should get rid of all 435 members of the House and all 100 members of the Senate and start over, because Congress is literally failing the American people.
It's not a question of knowing or understanding. It's a question of who controls what goes on here. Money in politics. People cannot vote their conscience. The system is broken and corrupt, and that's what we have to address. And Trump says it is broken. Now, his remedies are going to make it even worse. Privatize, so you'll have even more power in the hands of the large corporate interests. So if you had an efficient Medicare system that covered all basic health care needs, what would the people say? You'd say, hey, that's great. I want to use that to cover all the kids and everybody else. There are people here who that's their nightmare, that you have an efficient government, because ultimately they want virtually every part of American society, including public education, including healthcare, to be privatized. And they're moving rapidly. I ran for president on the need for a Medicare for all single-payer program. So it exists in Canada right now. Do they have their problem? Everybody has a problem. Understand that when we talk about healthcare, John, 60,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor. Life expectancy is lower than other countries. Working class people in this country live 7 or 8 years shorter lives than the rich, pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We're paying twice as much per person for healthcare than the Canadians and people around the world. What is the function of the healthcare system? It is to make the drug companies and the insurance companies rich, and they will fight you to the death to give up that lucrative industry. Get rid of the profiteering, get rid of the billing, get rid of the complexity. If you did that, John, getting back to our original discussion, you'd restore a lot of faith in democracy and government.
Medicare for all isn't government health care. It is a baseline government health insurance, right? We can have the best version of a government health insurance program if we choose to have the best version of a government health insurance program. Why? Because in the end, it comes down to money. And we already spend that money in the system. The difference ultimately is the amount of money in overhead that goes into paying for like a C-suite, a CEO, and all the other things that we don't really need. So Medicare right now, right, which is, by the way, not the version of Medicare that we'd like to have. Okay. It doesn't fund hearing and vision and dental, which, like, I don't know any senior who doesn't need one of those. I don't know anybody who doesn't need dental. Like, it's just a thing people need. And so the idea that we allow Medicare to be incomplete, do you know why we allow it to be incomplete? Because the industry lobbies against improving Medicare so that they can offer Medicare Advantage. So they keep the baseline version bad or less good so that they can offer a different version where the money goes to them and they pocket anything they don't spend. I mean, so even the failures of Medicare still go back to the insurance industry.
We are the only wealthy nation on earth that has not figured out a healthcare for all system, a Medicare for all system. So I wanted to bring that up because while we recognize that our immediate goal is that we need to ensure that the ACA tax credits are extended. We have an immediate responsibility with a January deadline before so many people lose their health care. I wanted to make it clear and known that we also have a responsibility of fixing this system, that we have to plan now for a future where Americans are no longer rationing care. We have to plan now for a system where Americans are no longer dying of curable diseases or figuring out if they'll take their diabetes medicine or if they'll pay their rent. We not only have a responsibility to do that, but we also know that it is actually cheaper. We have data that shows us that we can implement a better system that covers all people in this country. People fundamentally want us to fix the system.
To the surprise of literally nobody on earth, Mike Johnson has decided that he's not even going to allow a vote on the extended Affordable Care Act tax credits. Mike Johnson's entire job in Congress is to make sure that all the Republicans do what Donald Trump wants. And Donald Trump was the one who had concepts of a plan. And then before that, he guaranteed that he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare. And to this day, there's no plan because Donald Trump has no plans for anything. You know, the Affordable Care Act at the end of the day is Republican. It's Romney Care. It is very far away from single payer, and it's not even that close to a public option. And since the Affordable Care Act has been put in place, tens of millions of people have gotten health care, gotten health insurance that didn't have it before. So obviously we need to move forward from here. The Democrats reluctantly don't do this, but Republicans are always trying to backtrack us. They've been trying to get rid of Obamacare for years and years with nothing to replace it with. That's what the entire government shutdown was about. Just a month or so ago, is because the Republicans are dead set determined to make sure that everybody's health care premiums go up. And that's what's about to happen. You know, and as I've said before, if you only pay maybe $130, $140, $150, a couple $100 a month for health insurance, that doubling or tripling, that's really inconvenient, but you might be able to afford that. But think about families. You know, you might be paying $1,400 a month just to insure your family, maybe more than that. If that doubles, if that triples, well, now, I mean, people don't have a place to live. You know, a couple $100 more can be detrimental. A couple $1,000 more can absolutely sink the ship completely. So, unfortunately, people are about to suffer because of this, but this is the Republican way.